Hello, Packers fans. Welcome into PackersNews.com and our annual 2023 virtual NFL draft party, pre-NFL draft party. That's a mouthful no matter how you say it. Basically, the NFL draft starts in 25 hours, 24 hours and 40 minutes here, give or take, really. And we're here to get you ready for it. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined by Tom Silverstein and Ryan Wood, here to preview the 2023 NFL draft and what the Packers might do in it. Guys, I know you've been through a lot of NFL drafts. How are you feeling on draft eve? Spoon, you look so excited.
I am.
That's just his resting state.
I can't hold it in much longer. The anticipation is just killing me.
You know, I'm
What do
excited
you have
for
any
Kassidy.
draft traditions? What are you excited for?
Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
Big excitement for Sunday.
Yeah. It's always a grind, but it's always kind of fun when you're in the middle of it too, especially on Saturday when the picks are just coming left and right. It's always a lot of fun.
The best part of it is you spend a couple months in this very vague ambiguity of what are they going to do? What are they going to do? And like to get an answer, because we're all journalists here. We like answers. That's why we ask questions. To get an answer and then know and then move forward and proceed. And now it's real. Now it's tangible. I do enjoy that part of it. The pre-draft, I've never been a big fan of because it's just speculation. But to get that answer, that is a good feeling.
Do y'all have any pre-draft traditions, like anything that you do the night before, the day of? Spoon, I know the draft is always right around your birthday, so do you have any draft traditions that you try to honor?
I usually try to get a lot of sleep. I get in really early on Thursday. I try to get to the office early and print off a bunch of stuff that I'll need. I usually do something on I start looking at trade possibilities, what it would take to move up to certain spots and back to certain spots. And then I'm just getting ready for my party with my blog folk.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 3 days of blog.
Do you celebrate, like, do your blog folks wish you happy birthday when it gets
No,
close?
I don't tell anybody. I just
Oh, are you mad at me for ruining your secret now?
Yeah, it kind of there's no room for sentimentality. We're all football all the time.
Here's the thing. Let me give you a little sneak behind the peek behind the scenes here. Spoon and his blog is the most impressive thing that I have seen in almost a decade of covering this team. The way, I mean, he's a machine. He does not stop. It's incredible. I don't know how he does it, but it's definitely worth the. But
Yeah,
as much as
a split brain, I mean, you definitely have to have a left brain, a right brain, a second left brain, and a second right brain. And, I've always kind of lived in my own universe, so I can focus in on that.
You're probably happy there, Spoon. I don't blame you. Stay in your own little universe if you can.
I've been there a lot.
Yeah.
Many times.
The draft for me, I don't have a lot of traditions, Kassidy, but it just always feels like covering a night game for me. It's just that when you cover a night game, you guys know how it is. There's nothing. It's the calm before the storm. You know it's coming. You know it's going to be a long night, but there's nothing to do at like 3:00 in the afternoon.
Right.
It's just so slow, and it's just that it's the same thing with the night kickoff. It's like, okay, this feels weird. Like I know this is going to be a full work day, but it's going to be well after midnight before I'm done. So it always makes me feel that way, kind of the covering the night game type feel.
Yeah, I don't know how
That makes a lot of sense.
I don't know how you and others, when it gets down to the 5th and 6th round and the picks are just flying by, and how do you remember one from the other? And you're listening to the press conference, the guy calling in, and then the coach comes down or scout comes down. I mean, it's one thing to have to do little blurbs like I do in the blog, but to have to write stories on each of those, is pretty amazing, and I don't know that I could do that anymore.
You know, the thing for me that's always an adventure with the way it's set up now. The last few years, I've done a second round mock immediately after the first round, because as soon as the first round's done, the NFL, give them credit, they know how to promote themselves. And as soon as the first round concludes, it's all on. I mean, the second round now feels like the first round. It feels very similar. So, write the story the night of on whoever they pick, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, a lot, what we're thinking there. But it's the second round mock right after the story's done. We're talking 1 a.m. when I start writing this thing. I don't go to bed draft night until there's been 3-4 o'clock in the morning nights. I'm like, okay, let me get a few hours. That's why I'm looking forward to Sunday.
To your point, Spoon, that was definitely interesting last year. And I had our colleague Tom with me to kind of balance it. But you're writing quick stories on who they drafted, and you're doing that with one hand while listening through your other ear into the Zoom on another guy, and then you're getting ready for the next, and then you're finishing up the other guy. You're usually juggling 3 guys at once on that Saturday.
I know, and the curse is 4 7th rounders. I mean, I've been there. I think the record is 5. There might have been 5 one year. I have to look that up. But
yeah,
it's brutal. That is really hard. Of course, you guys were not around when there were 12 rounds.
Oh.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Tell us about it, Grandpa. Tell us about it.
Oh my God, that was brutal. I mean, and I don't even remember how they broke it up. It must have been like the first 3 rounds on the first day, and then 6 rounds on the next, or 9 rounds on the next day. I honestly, I think it was only 2 days too. And we would do it in the Packers locker room back in the old facility. They would just clear everything out, and there'd be a little table where Ron Wolf and Mike Holmgren would come down and sit, and that was it. They might have had a TV on. I don't really remember.
It occurs to me, Saturday's the grueling grinding day. I mean, one, I don't sleep Thursday night, and I imagine that you guys don't get a lot of sleep either. But it's 4 through 7. That's a lot of rounds. But we all wear different hats on that day, because for me, it's all on what Brian Gutekunst, and even more importantly, Matt LaFleur, because the Saturday after it's all done, it's the first time we get to talk to Matt LaFleur about his new pieces on the field and how they fit. It's all what they say. Cassidy's cranking out these pick stories and introducing you to who these players are. And Spoon, I don't know when it is that you get started on the free agents, but that is a huge chore. And I know that everyone really enjoys knowing who the players are that they get after the draft, and Spoon does the heavy lifting on that. So we're kind of all 3 in our own little planets there.
Yeah, that's a team effort after the draft. That's kind of fun, I think. And we're all kind of finding names and trying to verify it. Is that a tryout guy, or is that really? Because there's all kinds of information out there too.
All I know is that by the time I file the main bar on Saturday, and I go up to you, I'm like, okay, how you doing? You got like half the list already. It's you're a machine with that too.
Before we kind of get into the details of this year's draft, and I see we've got some questions coming in, so we want to get started on these too. But I did want to ask you each quickly, what is the craziest draft story you have? Like, what's the craziest draft you've been a part of? What's the night that made you sit there and go like, holy crap, did that just happen? Whoever wants to start first. Brian, you go first.
You know what? I'll go first because Spoon's Rolodex goes back a lot further than mine. But the draft that I'll never forget is, and when I first got on the beat, I remember Pete Dougherty was doing our draft series at the time. He's doing it now. So make sure you read Pete's column on who they're going to pick, because he's put a lot of effort into that tomorrow morning. But he told me, when you're thinking one thing, they're thinking something completely different. They're thinking the other. And I didn't really fully understand that until the 2015 draft, when it was obvious that the Packers were taking a cornerback. They had to take a corner. Everyone knew that first round they were taking a corner. So those couple months leading up to the draft, I knew every single cornerback, every single corner going into that draft. And then they put a name up there that I'd never seen before. They put up Demarius Randall. And he was a safety out of Arizona State. He plays. I did no prep on Demarius Randall at all, but the Packers saw Demarius Randall, safety in college, as a cornerback, and it just completely floored me. And that was really the moment when I realized, okay, they really do think outside the box. I mean, the amount of film that they go throughout the year, it's unmatchable. And the draft is about being creative, having contingencies, casting a wide net when you're covering it, going into it, casting a wide net, knowing there's all kinds of options that they could do, and just trying to cast the widest net as possible to think of all the options that are possible for that first round.
Spoon?
I guess I'm sure there's one that was a little more, at least personally, memorable, but I guess it was when Ted Thompson took Justin Harrell in the first round, and then he had to go out to the atrium and talk to Dougherty, just blew the heck out of him. And everybody, when they put Justin Harrell's name there, was like, what? And it was a complete surprise. And poor Ted had to go out there. He did all this work, during the year, and he puts that name goes up there, and he's got to face all these really angry fans who know nothing about the draft, but they were right about Justin Harrell at that time.
How long did he last?
Oh man, he got hurt right away, and no, not very long.
Spoon, not the only time that there's been negative feedback, and it's probably a fitting day to remember that 18 years ago, there were a lot of upset Packers fans at Ted Thompson when they had the audacity to draft a quarterback when they had Brett Favre on the roster. And this is the conclusion now of Aaron Rodgers, but it turned out pretty well.
That was interesting because, that was when they were just I don't know how long they had been doing the green room, but that became the signature of a guy just waiting and waiting, and they kept going down and down, and then everybody started, I wonder, would the Packers take this guy? Would they? And sure enough, there it was. So that was an interesting day for sure.
This was well before I got onto the Packers beat, but I just remember even a couple of years ago, the shockwaves from the 2020 draft with the Adam Schefter news, and then of course the Jordan Love drafting, and that was sort of, if you think back on it, almost signaled the beginning of the end for maybe this Rodgers era here in Green Bay. Even though he went out and won 2 more MVPs since then. That's a great segue.
Different because it was during the COVID era, we weren't even there.
Yeah.
We were all doing it from home.
I was home.
Yeah. And I remember we had the Brian Gutekunst teleconference. Do you remember that? And someone had their interference or something. They wouldn't mute themselves.
That was during the early COVID time when people still did not know what a mute button was. And
right.
I don't have any hair, but it's a good thing because I would have yanked it all out.
Oh, it was brutal. You couldn't even understand him hardly. And here he is talking about the biggest move. Well, he might have been talking about Rodgers, or he might have been talking about Love. I don't really remember, but it was like...
That was not good. That was shortly after that the Packers moved to Zoom because they were like, we cannot repeat this again. This teleconference, and that we didn't even. So Zoom, we would put in raise our hand in the call and be called on, so it was orderly. This teleconference, there was nothing orderly about it. We were just talking over each other. It was unbelievable.
Right. Well, luckily we have moved on from that, as well, or at least hope so. You never know. Spoon, if you wouldn't mind getting a little bit closer to your computer. We've got some people saying it's a little bit hard to hear you, and you provide so much insight. We want to hear everything you have to say loud and clear. There we go. Let's jump into this year's draft. Packers have 11 picks now, I believe it is, after making that trade with the New York Jets to send Aaron Rodgers. They now hold pick number 13 in the first round. They did a little swappity swap with the Jets, sent them pick number 15, got pick 13, and then also received pick 42 in the second round. That's in addition to the pick number 45 they already had. And you know what? I'm just going to run down the whole list real quick here. In the third round, they own pick 78. In the fourth round, pick 116. In the fifth round, pick 149. In the sixth round, pick 207, which also came from the Jets. And then in the seventh round, Spoon, you hit the nail on the head. They have 4 picks as of right now: 232, 235, 242, 256. 242 came from Jacksonville. I'm going to assume that's the pick that sent the offensive lineman.
Cole Van Lannon trade.
Cole Van Lannon, yeah. And then pick 235 from Detroit via the Rams.
That was a swap, wasn't that for Bajorquez?
I think so.
Okay.
I think they swapped
Not sure, but I think
6
so.
for a 7, Bajorquez or something like that.
And then pick 256 is a compensatory pick. 4 in the 7th round. Got a lot of capital now to work with, some good capital to work with. Let's kind of jump into some of these questions from the guys or from different fans. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. Let's start with Aaron. What if the Packers pick the defensive lineman from Pittsburgh at 13? To be honest, Aaron, I'm not sure exactly the details on this particular defensive lineman. But let's talk about just that position as a whole. Is that a position you could see them going at number 13? Or is that sort of a premium position? Or a premium pick, I guess.
You want to take that, Ryan?
I think the shorter list is positions I can't see them going in the first round. Like, I can't see quarterback. I can't see Bijan Robinson out of Texas. I know that he's a stud, but the thing with me with running backs is that of all the positions that are difficult transitions from college to the NFL, running back's not one of them. So, yeah, on the horizon, running back might be a need with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. But it's fairly doable to draft a rookie and put him in. So I don't see a running back. I don't think that they're going to go interior defensive line in the first round. But that's just because best player available. It seems to be edge, tackle, tight pass catcher, maybe Jackson Smith and Jigba or Dalton Kincaid. It doesn't look like this is a draft that's going to have Jalen Carter out of Georgia is a guy that if he was to fall, but then the Packers would have to consider character issues because there's a reason why he would be falling. Outside of that, I don't really see the bang for the buck in that position at 14.
I'm going to just make sure real quick. Spoon, click that again. There we go. Nope. We are professionals. Do not try this at home. There we go. That one got it. That
sounds better.
Yeah. Speaking of JSN, Ryan, that would require taking a receiver in the first round, which is a little taboo, as we know, for the Packers. That does bring up Nick's question here. Hope Goop finally changes his old ways and grabs a wide receiver in the first round, since we are thin there, especially if Watson were to get injured. You have a pretty young and solid core. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, even Samori Toure to an extent, but there's not too much beyond that. Do you need a first round receiver there for depth? Or is that too rich of a taste for?
Yeah, I mean, you have to follow history, and they just don't take. That's been the philosophy forever. They don't take guys in the first round. I mean, I'm sure there's some, if they would have been up in the top 10, they would take. But I mean, I have reservations. Is he going to be the best player at number 13 in the entire draft? I'm sure there's some people who think so. I'm also worried about a guy who missed most of the season because of a hamstring injury.
Mm-hmm.
He did have a phenomenal year when the two, Chris Olave and the guy from the Jets were on the team, and he still caught like 1,600 yards. But how much of that was because those two guys were there and all the focus was on them? So I don't anticipate that being the pick. That would be a pick that would surprise me.
And to your point, so maybe this actually works in his favor. I think one of you said this the other day. Ohio State wide receivers transfer well to the NFL. So just that pedigree alone might help him, but that's looking at a resume more than the tape so much. And
I
supposed
think
to do that in the
probably
draft.
gets a bump from the Ohio State wide receiver classes.
Right.
That he's part of that, and maybe he's a little overrated because of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting to see. Plus, he's a slot guy, and I don't know, if slot guys are worth taking up that high. I don't know.
Packers need a slot receiver, though.
I think they need pass catchers in general, and preferably the middle of the field. But you got to look. Everyone wants to talk about receiver, but tight ends catch too, and they even do more. They block, and Matt LaFleur really likes his tight ends. So I think you just group that right in there. Spoon, to your point, totally. It's been a hot minute since they've taken pass catchers. 2002. All right, so we're talking a long time since they took a pass catcher first round. With that said, the number one thing in this draft that they have to do is tool up around Jordan Love. He's got to have more weapons. You want to provide the best landing strip possible for Jordan Love to cruise on in here from backup, to start his NFL career as a starter. You want as much talent as you can put around him. So maybe this is a different year. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if they didn't because, again, it's from history. It's just not what they do. But this is different from a standpoint that they have a first-time starting quarterback and a dearth of talent around him at the skill positions. I mean, this is an area where they really need to do well by Jordan Love in this draft.
That leads to a good question here from Mitchell. Just overall, what position do you think Green Bay will get first? I know that we have talked about tight end a lot, and you've got Dalton Kincaid sitting there, and he'd probably be available at 13. And Ryan, I know you're going to make the George Kittle point, so I'm going to let you do it. That just seems awfully rich for a tight end.
Yeah, I don't disagree
with you. Why is Dalton Kincaid worth a 13th pick overall?
I don't disagree with you. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to their internal evaluation. And that's not just with tight end. That's with whoever they pick. How do they feel about the player at any position? Because in the first round especially, you're trying to get talent on the field. That's what you're trying to do. And I asked Brian Gutekunst this on Monday, and he said that, he weights different positions with different values. Tight end is not one of your four premier positions. They don't win games. Quarterbacks, left tackles, cornerbacks, and edge rushers win games in this league. With that said, it is their biggest need in a vacuum without question. They need bodies there. Josiah DeGuara is their top tight end. And at the end of the day, if you're Brian Gutekunst and you feel like Dalton Kincaid is the next George Kittle, 13 doesn't seem too rich because there's nothing on this roster that would upgrade it quicker, let alone the offense, than adding a George Kittle. If he's not a George Kittle, if that's not your internal evaluation, then okay, you can wait till the second round to get a tight end because it's not one of those four premier positions. So I think that's going to be really interesting. We're going to find out real quick. I imagine he'll be on the board. We're going to find out real quick what Brian Gutekunst feels about Dalton Kincaid. But, if he's the next George Kittle, that's what they believe. I don't think that's too rich at 13.
Dalton Kincaid, of course. Go ahead.
The thing about the tight end class is it's so deep that, and especially, second and third rounders. When was George Kittle drafted? Fourth round?
Fifth round. He's a
fifth round.
When was Kelsey drafted?
Third,
right? So, I'm not so sure that you need to take a tight end with the first pick. And Kincaid, we know, is not a complete tight end. Excellent route runner. Very natural pass catcher. Got a little bit of a back problem that sidelined him during the off season. But if you think that there's some developmental guys that could be as good as him, I would weigh, sometimes you have to weigh what the strength of the class is versus, who you're going to take up there.
Here's the thing I thought about. I'm really curious to get what you think as well, but because I hear you on that, especially if the talent that you're going to get at 13 is pretty much the same as 42. Why not wait till 42? But I strongly feel that they need to get 2 tight ends from this deep class. 1 is not enough. They need 2. Yeah. So if you start your draft, and I would never say they need to start their draft with a tight end. I'm not saying that. If they took a left tackle, if they took a edge rusher, that's just fine. But if you do start your draft with a tight end at 13, you're on a really good start to getting 2 from this class because that's what they need. It's not about getting 1. I think they need to get 2.
Dalton Kincaid's stats from this past year, just for those that are interested: 70 receptions, 890 yards, averaged 12.7 per catch, 8 touchdowns. I want to say, I'm trying to remember from the combine story I did on him. Spoon, you might be able to remember better here. I want to say he led all tight ends in college football in touchdowns for sure, and I believe yardage as well.
Yeah, I can't recall.
You can't recall the tight end stats from college football off the top of your head?
Yeah.
What good are you to me?
Yeah.
Get out of
here. I do wonder about the what you've kind of mentioned, Ryan, is the importance of that position. Is that position more important than a left tackle? Is Dalton Kincaid going to be rated higher on your board than Paris Johnson or Broderick Jones? As a pure athlete, is he got a higher upside than those guys? Sometimes you have to just bite the bullet and say, we view this guy as a better player, and we might not need him this year, but in the long term, that guy's going to be a better player.
Do you remember, Spoon, near the end of Mike McCarthy's tenure? I was talking with Pete Dougherty about this the other day. There was, I think, at least twice that he was talking about tight ends, and he said that to him it had really become like the 5th premier position. Now, I don't know how I feel about that. I do know Matt LaFleur really likes tight ends. He's very multiple in his offense. So if that's a trend, I don't think it's too much of a far reach to think that Matt LaFleur values tight end a lot. But do you remember Mike McCarthy talking about that? He would say, stretch the seam of the field, all the multiple things that they do schematically in the offense. That he kind of felt like it was that 5th premier position.
Yeah, he loved tight ends.
He did.
He kept 5. Wasn't he the one who kept 5 tight ends on the roster one year?
Yeah.
He saw what it was like to have Jermichael Finley for a couple years. And I mean, I remember talking to him and we were just going crazy in meeting rooms, thinking of all the things they could do with Michael Finley. And, if he would have matured and been able to continue his career, it would have been really interesting. So someone of that nature, yeah, man, that guy could change the team. And the tight end has become a different position than it was. Even when McCarthy was coach, I think it is a really good position. But again, it's weighing the strength of the class. I would understand if they passed up a tight end.
Jordan Love.
And I stand corrected. Dalton Kincaid did not lead college football in touchdowns for tight ends. It was Michael Mayer from Notre Dame who had 1 more touchdown than he did.
The other option.
That's somebody you could get at 42 or 45, I think.
Maybe. He seems like a late first-round guy to me, but maybe. You never know.
He rubbed some people wrong the other day with his Chipotle order, so he may be dropping down some draft boards.
Oh, what was it?
Some people felt he put too much sour cream in his bowl.
I'd be one of them. I hate sour cream. Not a sour cream person.
Load me up with it.
Say no to condiments in general. No ketchup, no mustard, no mayo, no sour cream.
How do you eat your chicken fingers?
I eat them with buffalo sauce, which is a condiment. Okay, I make exceptions sometimes.
What do you
But
do? Do you put dressing on your salads?
We
A
talk
vinaigrette,
football,
maybe?
please. I don't think our listeners want to hear you talk about
Spoon, this is important.
This
This
is.
is important.
You guys
This
can do
tells
this
you.
afterwards.
Listen, Will Levis is getting asked about the way he drinks his coffee in draft meetings. So, boom. Then again, he drinks it with mayonnaise in his coffee. So that may be a sign of a deeper
Yeah,
problem.
you haven't heard about that?
Yeah.
No, Mr. Anti-Condiment here has not heard about mayonnaise and coffee. That's unbelievable to me.
I love this question from Bart, mostly because I have no idea who these people are, and I'm hoping Spoon will. So we're popping it up. Will Jordan Love be a better quarterback than Don Majkowski and Lynn Dickey?
That's really funny that that question was asked, because I was talking to a scout the other day, and we were just reminiscing about old Packer players, and he kind of dissed Lynn Dickey a little bit, and I was like, "Hey, watch it there, buddy. Lynn Dickey was a warrior. That dude. I mean, he had a cannon, and he couldn't move a lick. He could not move 3 inches to his left or right. And he played behind the worst offensive lines ever. And he just got creamed constantly. But he's the reason James Lofton took off. I mean, he was a hell of a quarterback. It was so bad. Like he was with the Houston Oilers, and I think at one point he got hit so hard, like his hip and femur got dislocated, and they had to put it back right on the field because he would have died if they didn't. I mean, that's how tough this guy was. His leg got shattered. He's still around. I mean, he's a very interesting guy. Majkowski, I think Jordan Love has a better arm than Don Majkowski. Don Majkowski's a heck of an athlete. He could run. He could move around the pocket. He just didn't have the arm that Jordan Love does. And I think Jordan Love will be better than both of those. But Dickey, man, he's got a lot to prove to get ahead of my boy Dickey.
He's a good one in your book.
Yeah, just the memories of him getting creamed, and the poor guy. You're like, get rid of the ball. You're gonna get creamed.
Oh, memory lane. I would. You said he's still around. I'd love to see how he's getting around. Somebody who had his bone popped back into place.
He comes to the alumni stuff. I think he's made of iron or something. You know,
He must be. It sounds like that old folk song, Big John, is what it makes me think of. Somebody like that. Good question from Jeff here. Spoon, this could help you get out of those 4th, 7th round picks. What are the chances of trading up some of those 7th rounders and turning it into a 6?
I don't think so. I think they're going to use those 7ths to get their priority free agents, like the guys they really, really are like borderline. I think they'll take a kicker in the 7th. I think they'll take a quarterback maybe in the 7th. Maybe they'll take 2 kickers. I don't know. But there's some kickers that they like, and they're borderline priority free agents and draft picks. I would hang on to them if I were them. Now, they don't necessarily, 7th rounders don't have the best record, but they're guys who can fill up your roster. I think I would keep them.
While we're on that topic, a thing that caught my ear today that Brian Gutekunst said was he feels that 2nd round pick that he got from the Jets, number 42, gives them really good maneuverability at the top of the draft. He said that. So here's what we know about Brian Gutekunst. He likes to trade on draft day. Big fan of that. He's broadcasting it. He might not. You never know. But don't be surprised if they move around a little bit.
What if he just shocks everybody and moves up and takes Bijan Robinson? Like, hey, I'm helping Jordan Love, and what a way to help him with, the best running back in country.
How do you feel about that? I'm very not on the running back train because I just feel like that's a position that you can draft as a rookie. You can plug them in. It's a need next year, perhaps, but you can wait till next year with all these other needs. And I know that Bijan Robinson is a dude. I mean, he is a stud. But it's just I can't reconcile. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I sort of feel that way. Like I started thinking, well, Saquon Barkley was probably Bijan Robinson. You know, I mean, best running back that anybody's seen in a long time, and one knee injury, and bam. You know, I mean, he's still a really good player, but the running back position is just so you get so beat up. I would have an issue, but this guy, if he stuck around, if he didn't get hurt, or if he's, he'd be Marshawn Lynch plus, I don't know who else, but it would be an interesting if he did that.
There are 259 picks in this year's draft. The Packers hold number 256, so they're 3 shy of picking Mr. Irrelevant. You both talked about possibly taking the quarterback late in the 7th round. I'm asking you to really dig deep on your knowledge of this year's draft class. Is there a Brock Purdy that you could grab in the 7th round this year as a good backup, somebody to push Jordan Love in camp?
Yeah. There's a bunch of guys. I mean, there's a ton of quarterbacks. You got your choice of all kinds of guys, from tall guys, short guys, guys with good arms. It's just that there's not very many complete ones. 2 guys that people around here should know: Sean Clifford from Penn State and Tanner Morgan from Minnesota. I mean, those are 2 guys who are, those are the type of quarterbacks that McCarthy used to bring in, like the Joe Callahans and guys like that. And you never know; they could do something. But there's a lot of quarterbacks available this year. I just don't know. Some of them I think they'll rule out because they're 6-footers. But you could. If there's someone in there who's going to be pretty good, I think.
That's the fascinating thing to me in this draft is when do they take quarterback? Because they got to take quarterback. And when I did the draft needs last week, I just did everything in a vacuum. And for me, it's the 4th biggest need on the roster. I think there's a clear top 3. I think it's tight end, edge rusher, safety. I'd put quarterback ahead of receiver. I'd put it ahead of defensive line. The reason that they need bodies there. They don't just, and you can. There's a whole bunch of other reasons. They don't really know what they have in Jordan Love. So, I'm not saying they go 13 overall and pick someone to compete with them, but getting a developmental project that can be a fail-safe maybe down the line, that's not a bad idea. They definitely need a backup.
I'm going to add left tackle because I honestly think this is David Bakhtiari's last year, whether it's for health reasons or cap reasons. And they better have someone ready for Love to stick in there. This is sort of my conspiracy theory, is that what held maybe the trade up was that Gutekunst was demanding to go from 15 to 13 because there's something there that changes right around that spot. And one of them was that both the Patriots at 14 and the Jets at 15 need offensive linemen. Maybe he felt like he needs an offensive lineman. It's a terrible draft after like the first 5 guys. Then there's nobody. So maybe he wants that, or maybe there's something else he saw at 13 that, or he thought that was the cutoff for first rounders. Like maybe they only had 13 guys first round picks with grades of first round pick. I kind of think that was really important. So we'll find out why tomorrow.
Interesting question here from Tyson about a local guy. Sorry. If Keanu Benton is there at 13, do the Packers take defensive tackle out of Wisconsin? That's a pretty high draft. His draft grade is usually around round 2. I don't think they would use 13th pick on someone like
No, but they
Benton.
might have to move up in the second from 42. But he may go at the end of the first round. I don't know. He's probably a second from everything that I've seen. I haven't talked to a lot of scouts about where he would go. But hey, they can always use another defensive tackle, no question.
While we're on tight ends, Ryan, I'll throw this question to you. Jeff asked, "What do you think about the tight end out of Georgia in round 2?" If I'm using good draft capital on a tight end out of Georgia, I'm saving them for next year to move up for Brock Bowers. I'm not taking the guy this year. I
Then
think
you better start Danny Etling at quarterback.
Yeah, I think you got a lot of company there on Brock Bowers.
That guy.
yeah.
I could see Matt LaFleur really liking him because Matt LaFleur really likes his inline tight ends that can be used as a fifth offensive line or sixth offensive lineman and maybe give you some, it seems like Darnell Washington's got some good juice for his size, but I think long term a question with him is going to be how quickly does a guy that big get slow?
Mhm.
So long term, I wonder, but from a schematic fit, he's a younger version-ish of Mercedes Lewis.
Yeah.
And Matt LaFleur really saw some value in Mercedes Lewis over the last few years. They played him a lot. There's a reason for that. Schematically, that's a guy I can see the head coach liking.
Everything about Darnell Washington makes me think Mercedes Lewis. That's exactly it.
Yeah, except that he is not the blocker. He's got the size, but he is not technique-wise even close to what Mercedes Lewis. Now, I'm sure it took Mercedes Lewis coming out was a pass-catching tight end.
Right.
I mean, he was considered, a touchdown guy, and it was through time that he became such a good blocker. So Darnell Washington has a lot to learn about blocking, even though he's massive. And if you can teach it to him, then then he can be Mercedes.
This doesn't have anything to do with the draft, but I saw this question from Rich, and I just want us to talk about it for a second here. He asked, "What will the name of the Green 19 podcast be now?" It will still be Green 19 because why, Spoon?
Well, that's been their cadence. That's always been their cadence or for a long time. And we'll see if they change it with Jordan Love. I don't know why they would. I don't even know what it means. I've never even asked them what it means.
I have a philosophy.
And they started in 1919.
I have a philosophy here. What year were the Packers founded?
Oh,
that's what I've always just assumed.
That's a good
That's
one. Good thought. Wow.
Yeah, Kassidy, you're with me there?
from the moment I heard the name of the podcast and realized that it was Roger's Cadence. I've just always assumed that's what it was.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really funny. It was something else when Favre was here, and I used to know it, by heart because I had heard it. Now all of a sudden it was Red 15 or something like that. Oh shoot.
Yeah.
Their backup cadence, I don't know if it's a check cadence, an audible cadence. I don't know how they use it, but every now and then, what do you hear, like a blue 42 or something, or blue, something like that.
Yeah.
That just makes me think of the movies where it's like blue 42 or Wedding
blue
Crashers.
48 or some blue and some number in the 40s.
I think it's Wedding Crashers where that's Vince Vaughn's cadence in Wedding Crashers. He's like, "Boo, boo, boo."
I'm going to tell everybody the true story behind the Green 19 lead-in to that was I came up with the Green 19 idea, but then I was like, okay, but we got to have an opening here. And so I went searching, listening, trying to find something we could steal, which I probably shouldn't have even say that because YouTube will sue us or something. So what I find is this clip of Rodgers, and he's saying the Green 15, and then all of a sudden the ball goes through his legs, and it's Green 15, Green 15. Oh, that's like clear as day, on this player. I just thought that was perfect. You have to cut off the expletive. I tried that. I get back then, Olivia was here, and I tried to get her to find a beat so we could get it over. We never could never could do it. So you just
That's funny. Yeah, we haven't heard that from Jordan Love yet. I actually, Rich, to your question, I went through every snap Jordan Love has played for the Green Bay Packers last night, preseason and regular season, trying to find a clip of him clearly saying Green 19. And he was not mic'd at the Eagles game or at the pretty much any of the preseason. I guess because they weren't at the Eagles, they weren't expecting him to come in, so he wasn't mic'd, and just the regular mics weren't picking him up. He was mic'd at the Chiefs game, but unsurprisingly, that place is incredibly loud, and so you could hear him saying it, but it was just like a muffled through the tunnel, like you knew he was saying it, but you couldn't really hear it.
maybe you can get it at OTAs with a boom mic or something.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Or if nothing else, I'll just walk up to his locker and be like, "Can you tell me your cadence real quick? Do it with feeling. Do it just like you would on the field."
3 times. You got to do it 3 times.
Throw in an expletive in there just for the fun. No, we won't have him do that. We've got a couple more questions in here that I want to get to before we do sign off. Let's start with this one from Tyson. How do you feel about Peter Skronsky? Would the Packers go O-line at 13 if he's still there? It sounds like from what you both said, you wouldn't be shocked if they go O-line period at 13. And it's a matter of grabbing the best available guy.
I don't know about period. He's going to wind up being a guard, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't think he'd be real high on their list, but I know a lot of people think he's going to be a really good player.
Same as Spoon said.
So good guy, but not necessarily a 13 guy, please, for the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go that high, they need a tackle. They need a future left tackle if they're going to take an offensive lineman that high.
Yeah.
Now they need somebody. If you're going to use 13, then try to find somebody who can replace Bakhtiari next year.
There's 2 back-to-back questions here from Robin that I want to get to. Let's start with this one. I feel like this will be the easier one to answer. Could the Packers try and trade up for Gonzalez corner from Oregon if he falls to 7 or 8? Ryan, as you said, corner is one of those top positions that you spend first-round picks on, but do they need a corner right now?
Just watching that.
Outside the box theory for you. Right now, they're not moving Rasul Douglas to safety, but it's a bad safety class, and they need someone there. If they fall in love with a cornerback, that might make Rasul Douglas a lot more movable to safety. I don't think it's going to happen in the first round. I'd be surprised by that, but it wouldn't be surprised to take a corner early, and all of a sudden, possibility might be there to put Rasul Douglas at safety, because that just seems like it might be a better way to fill that safety void next to Darnell Savage. We know he's going to be there than trying to take one from this class.
Other question here from Robin with quarterbacks. We've talked a lot about the possibility of needing a veteran quarterback. You know, Brian Gutekunst said on Monday, we need a third quarterback, full stop. That could come through the draft. It could come as a veteran. Robin says, what about the crazy talk of the Packers trading for Tannehill from the Titans, experienced and played for LaFleur? Guys, I kind of like that. You don't like it?
No.
Well, he's got a big contract for one that they can't afford.
They're moving ahead with Love.
No, I'm not saying for a starter, and I guess Tannehill's not going to be willing to take a backup role. Is that more of a journeyman?
I think you're going to see someone like Joe Flacco or something like that. It's going to be a minimum guy who's been sitting around. Well, it'll be more than minimum, but they're not going to pay a lot. They need someone with a lot of to help him out. And that's really probably the bigger role. This guy coming in.
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna do it.
Joe Flacco is elite, if you haven't heard.
Yeah, I mean,
Not a Super Bowl.
That's the joke, Spoon. That Joe Flacco's elite, and anybody could win with him at any time. I'm going to stick here with Robin because this is another really good question. Do you think the Packers should draft more football-ready players versus great athletic scorers?
That's a great question.
That's the eternal debate.
Yep.
Gutekunst has been leaning towards athletes.
Sure
lately.
has.
And Ted Thompson used to lean towards football players. And it got Thompson in trouble, and the athlete thing has gotten Gutekunst in trouble too.
I said this on the podcast. You want both. You want a freak athlete that's a stud football player. You want both. Pretty rare to find both. And I feel like it's a lot easier to teach a great athlete how to play football than teach a really limited, great football player how to be an athlete at this level. So I think that's why Brian Gutekunst has leaned toward the athlete and putting a lot of stock in those measurables. But you want both. I'll take both, Kassidy.
That's fair.
A prime example is like Eric Stokes. So they draft him and great measurables, starting, to develop okay. I mean, not great, but he's never going to be a guy who can catch the ball. He's never going to be a takeaway corner. And so you're going to have to live with that. You're taking the speed and you're taking, not accepting the hands. And there's a flaw with everybody. But if you get a guy who likes football and is really athletic, you get Jair Alexander or Kenny Clark, someone like that. But those guys are hard to find. Monte Adams would be an example.
What's the old saying? Like, it's Jimmys and Joes versus X's and O's. I feel like it kind of lends itself to this argument as well. To Ryan's point, you almost need a mixture of both to kind of, and it also depends on the position they play, I think, as to which of those are more important. Is a defensive lineman need to be more football ready, whereas a corner needs to have a great athlete score. That has to be weighed to it as well. Well, I know we're getting ready to wrap up here. I think there was a question in here, and I apologize to the person who asked it now. I can't find it, but it was a good question. Over, under, do you think they go offense or defense in the first round? Just go with your gut. Where do you think they – and I'm not asking player or even positions. Do you think they go offense or defense in the first round?
I'll say offense.
I'll agree.
I think so too. Let's switch it up. Let's go off. Let's even go for a pass catcher in the first round.
I think they need to go offense.
There are no rules here anymore. As we said, the draft starts at 7 p.m. Central tomorrow night, Thursday. You can watch it on ESPN, ABC, or NFL Network. You can also follow along bit by bit, every single second of it, with Spoon on his live blog. Spoon, that live blog is starting at 6. Is that correct?
Yep.
Don't miss it.
And then Ryan will have rundowns for you of each round and each day. Tom and I will have breakdowns of each pick. Pete will have analysis at the end of each day. So will Spoon. Essentially, we've got wall-to-wall coverage for you starting at 6 p.m. on Thursday and running through Saturday evening when the UDFAs are gathered up. So make sure you stay tuned to it all. Turn on your notifications for Twitter and Facebook for Packers News, because we'll be doing Facebook Lives popping in when we can as well. And then we will also have new episodes of the Green 19 podcast, which it will still be called, as we move through the weekend. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a lot of fun. I feel like we've got a good draft plan if Brian Gutekunst wants to pay us for our insight. So now we'll just have to see what they do from here.
Yeah, it'll be something.
Well, Spoon was one step ahead of the Packers pretty much all last season, so you might as well listen to what he says about the draft too.
Oh man, I'll tell you, I like am the sucker in the water who bites on anything, like, oh, now I got it. They're doing this because of this, and I'm always wrong. Just.
You're never wrong, Spoon. I refuse to believe it.
I am so wrong on the draft.
Spoon, I'm trying to pump you up here. You're not helping me much. You're not helping me, Spoon.
You can look up my record. It's bad. It's bad.
I refuse to believe it. As I said, we'll have full coverage for you on PackersNews.com and our various social media channels and the live blog as well. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys, as always. We will see you tomorrow night for the draft when the pick is in. Do you like that sign off? Bye, guys.